welcome back to My Kitten Reads. I'm Eleanor and this is my April reading wrap up in which I had a much better month. I mean, I was set up for success this month, but I had a much better month after some terrible months. Like, seriously, March, I only finished 3 books. So I started the month at 19 when I should have been at 30 to be on track for my overall goal. So that's 10 books a month. So I was already over a month behind. I'm still behind, but I am catching up. So this month, April, was helped by the fact that I took time off the week after Easter. And also I had Dewey's 24-hour readathon. So yeah, so it was a month that was set up for me, but I also still read a lot like outside that as well. So yeah, it was a good month. So what did I read? Okay, what did I finish? So the first thing I finished in April was my reread of The Deep by Rivers Solomon and... why can't I remember their name? He worked with the rap group, starts with C, I think, that the guy from the original Hamilton cast is in, and the names have gone out of my head completely. Right, anyway, so The Deep, which is a novella length. It's a novella from a few years ago that is sort of based on the song by this band, which is then based on a piece of music by a previous composer. So it sort of works its way through, and essentially it's about mer people who came about when pregnant women were killed and tossed overboard from slave ships, and the children survived long enough to be born, and because they were born underwater, they became mer people, basically, essentially. Although that's not the term that's used in the story. And there's a whole bunch of stuff about memory, and so in this particular novella, the collective memory of the species is kept by one person and then is shared psychically over a few days once a year, but otherwise is kept by this one person. Except this time, our main character, it hurts her to keep all of this memory, and so when she shares it ritually, she runs away. Well, she swims away, and she goes and she interacts with a surface dweller who she's attracted to, but eventually returns home to take up her role again, because her people being lost in the memory is upsetting the ocean, essentially. So that is both authors of colour, and it is a queer story because the main character is female, and the surface dweller that she has a not really a relationship with. Sort of, it's ambiguous, but they're definitely attracted to each other and they talk about sex, and they are female as well. So it's both an author of Kyla, a BIPOC author, and a queer story. So that was my first finish. Then I finished, ta-da, The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow. So, you know, I read a lot of Austen adaptations, but funnily enough, this one has been staring at me for years on my physical TBR pile, because one of my brothers bought it for me for Christmas years ago. And because it's over 650 pages, it was intimidating. But the series recently came out, and I didn't want to watch the series before reading the book since it was already on my TBR. So I've read it. It was fun. I enjoyed it. All about Mary, of course. And I've now watched the first episode of the TV show. So yeah, I very much enjoyed it. Definitely a good read. And an easy read given how long it is. Seriously, intimidating size. Okay, and then I read another Austen variation, which was Elizabeth's Heritage by Elaine Burkett. This is a short one in which I think it's about novella length-ish. And maybe, I can't remember, but in this one, Elizabeth has grown up thinking with the Bennets, thinking she's illegitimate, except she's not. She's being looked after by the Bennets because her true father, who is a duke, caught her true mother trying to murder her because essentially her mother has a sort of a psychosis episode in which she thinks that Elizabeth's the reason she can't birth a healthy son as the heir to the dukedom. And so in order to keep Elizabeth safe, she's been raised by the Bennets. As it turns out, when she discovers who she actually is, building a relationship with her father and her younger brother is not necessarily going to go well. So she's got to decide for herself who she's going to be and how she wants to live. Then I was picking up some random things off my TBR pile while I was on leave. And so I read The Memory Librarian and Other Stories of Dirty Computer by Janelle Monáe. This is a collection of short stories that riff off Janelle Monáe's album and short film Dirty Computer from must have been, I think it was it pre-COVID? I want to say it was around 2018 that it came out, and I remember loving the album and the short film when it came. So the short film is essentially a bunch of joined up music videos but with some film stuff, and I remember loving it when it came out. And this is stories that expand on that world with co-writers like Elia Dawn Johnson, Danny Law, Eve L. Ebing, Johanka Delgado, and Cherie Renee Thomas. So this one is, of course, written because Janelle Monáe is an awesome Black woman, BIPOC author, and I'm also claiming it as queer because most of the stories, the women in it are sort of queer. So yeah. So this was fascinating and reminded me so much of the album that I actually, when I finished it, I immediately sat down and rewatched the short film and re-listened to the album because it'd been a long time since I'd actually listened to any Janelle Monáe. So that was a really fun experience for me, and another physical book off my list, as well as another BIPOC author and another queer story. Then I grabbed Torchwood, Almost Perfect by James Goss. Again, this one was given to me by a brother years ago. I love the Torchwood TV series. Had not actually read any of the books. Have listened to some of the audio plays by Big Finish. So this was a little fun one where there's sort of an alien device that is sort of taking people over and making people perfect, but it ends up with people being killed and moved out of time. So it was sort of fun. And, including one morning, Yanto Jones waking up with no memory of how he turned into a woman. So, yeah, this was fun. It was quick. Also, queer characters, because Captain Jack, of course, is queer, and Yanto, and it does reference their relationship because it's post series 2, so it's just Yanto, Jack, and Gwen, and of course Reese. But yeah, but there are other queer characters in this as well. So yeah, so it's another queer story and a fun one. Then I picked up Queen Victoria's Book of Spells, an anthology of gaslamp fantasy edited by Ellen Datlow and Terry Windling. You've probably seen me talk about this because I finished it as part of Dewey's. It was fun. Not a huge amount of stories jumped out at me, but there were ones that were based around Queen Victoria. There were ones that were based around fairies. Around the what's the movement's name? Arts and Crafts movement and Morris. So a lot of the sort of Victoriana stuff that I recognise. while still being new stories. So that was a fun read. Then I finished another ebook, which was Square to the Puck by JJ Mulder. Again, you've heard me talk about it in my Dewey's video. It was a queer hockey romance, the second book in the series, and this one was the one where the captain of our team has been closeted his entire career, and then the sort of controversial ratish player who he once kissed when he was a rookie turns up on the team, gets traded to the team, and they've got to navigate their relationship and their past and their future. So that was fun and sweet and funny, and I really enjoyed it. Then I also finished, and you'll have seen this again in Dewey's, A Curious Kind of Magic by Marla Rutherford. This is one of my Our Crate books, and it's a fantasy. In it, our main character, her father has passed away. She's trying to make his curiosity shop work, but she's in debt. And then she meets another girl who's searching for a grimoire, her family's grimoire. I struggle with that word a bit. And so she's sort of helping, but also trying to get this girl to help her make enough money to keep the shop going, and adventures ensue. So it was fairly enjoyable. I just didn't really click with the main character because they were sort of grumpy and unpleasant, which made it a little difficult because it was in first person, but definitely worth reading. So that was fun. And then I finished listening to Regina, The Queens Who Could Have Been by Emily Murdoch Perkins. This is a history book that goes through all of the eldest daughters of the English and British monarchs from Saxons forward, and sort of gives a potted history of that person and their life, and then extrapolates that to consider, had primogeniture worked differently, what kind of queens might they have been. And that varies very much depending on how much information is available, and what kind of lives they led. So that was fun. Then I started my reread of Seanan Maguire's Encrypted series, and so I read Discount Armageddon by Seanan Maguire, which is the first book in which our Verity Price is living in New York, trying to be a professional ballroom dancer whilst also trying to keep the local cryptid population in check, until unfortunately a very hot member of the Covenant of St. George arrives and they start to clash. And oh, is there still a dragon living under New York City? Because dragons are supposed to be extinct, but weird things are happening. So that was book one. Then book two, Midnight Blue Light Special by Seanan Maguire, in which they've sorted out the whole dragon issue, but then our Covenant of St. George hottie turns up and says, so I'm not sure what side I'm on, but the Covenant's sending people to assess the job that I'm doing and whether or not we're going to purge New York. I figured I should warn you, and things get out of hand. So particularly when one of the members of the Covenant that comes over is another Healy girl who is really, really, really mad about the side of her family that defected. So yeah, Verity's got to deal with that. Then I read A Different Account by Jan Roland, which was another Austen variation in which Elizabeth comes back from Kent with the knowledge of what kind of a person Wickham is, and instead of deciding to say nothing, she starts a very quiet campaign to sow seeds of doubt, because she knows the truth and she knows how much at risk the people in her community and her sisters are. And so things go very, very differently. And then I finished off the month by rereading Half Off Ragnarok by Seanan Maguire, which is book 3, in which we are no longer following Verity, we are following her older brother Alex, who is an expert on snakes and is working in a zoo in Ohio, trying to breed basilisks and survey the local cryptid wildlife, until one of the zoo employees turns up dead in a way that is very obviously not normal. And things go a little bit south and snaky. And also his girlfriend from Australia is not who she seems to be. So that was how I finished my month, with finishing that off. I am still rereading that series because when I last read it in 2020, I'd read 9 novels and all of the short stories, of which there were like 20 or 30 of them. Since then, Shonen has published 5 more novels and goodness knows how many short stories in that universe. So I'm rereading the novels, and then I do actually have book 10 sitting on my shelf. So that is a plan. So I read 13 books, 2 of which had BIPOC authors, 4 of which had queer characters or storylines. So that was excellent. I am not caught up to where I need to be. So I've read essentially 31 or 32. I keep forgetting how, was I at 19 or 18? But yeah, so I'm not caught up yet. I'm still behind where I should be, but I am getting there. And the Hugo Awards shortlist has just come out, and the voters pack is supposedly coming out this week. So that's a whole bunch of short fiction for me to read. And I was actually looking at maybe reading the graphic novels this year. And then I was looking at the novel shortlist, and the novel shortlist is actually, there's a few on there that I'm kind of interested in. So we'll see how we go. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I'm pleased with how I was reading in April. Now I've just got to do something similar in May. We'll see how we go. But for now, happy to discuss any of these books in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all again really soon. Bye.